Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. Today, super excited, a podcast that should have happened long ago. My friend Leslie Fear is here. We're going to talk about cults and a bunch of stuff. And real quick, Patreon /Rontowski if you want to do my psychic development tarot. Patreon, I have 3 different levels. Also, if you could join my email list at karenrontowski.com or paranormalkaren.com. I'm terrible. You won't get a lot of emails from me. Sometimes you won't get any, but I have my comedy dates. I have a bunch of comedy dates I need to post, and I've been terrible about promoting. So I might be coming to a club or a show near you. So please join my email list. I think you get 1 every 6 months, 2 if you're lucky, if I can see it. And I think that covers everything. Thank you for all reaching out on the podcast about courage. I really, I felt all the love and good vibes that you guys sent. So I really appreciate. I wasn't expecting that much feedback, but you were all fantastic. And so now let's get to the show. My friend Leslie Fear is here, and we're going to cover this. Well, first, let's talk. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Hi, Karen. It's good. It's just good to talk to you, girl. I have been wanting you back on my podcast as well. We got to make that work, but I'm so glad to be on yours.
And yes, and I'm sorry it took so long. And so let me tell you a little bit about Leslie. Leslie writes paranormal romance. She has a fantastic podcast called Because I Want to Know, WANNA, right?
Right.
Okay.
And Fear is my last name. It
yes,
really is.
The greatest last name, or that's your real last name is Fear, right?
It really is Fear. I know. I write paranormal romance and I have a paranormal true crime podcast.
That's
and you'd think I would have known better, but I didn't, and I just went with it. So there you go.
I love it. And before we get started, folks, we are going to be doing some conversations about cults, and this one might get a little darker than usual. I think you can all handle it. But we wanted to say, because this is such a touchy subject, that we're going to hit on some religions. And if it's yours, and you're welcome to send me an email expressing your side, but I think we're really talking about fundamental extremists, aren't we, Leslie?
Right. Yeah. No, we're not. We're talking about people that are just absolutely pretty much nuts. So let's just tell them that.
Yeah. And I am going to use the word fundamentalist because I think religions change when you put that on there. Do you know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
so we'll use that whether we're talking Mormons or Christians or when it gets too far out, that's what we're talking about. But right off the bat, we don't be offended if you hear us say your religion. But let's get started to where you started out, Leslie. Tell me, how did you get into paranormal romance?
Well, when I was younger, I would write stories and stuff in college and dabbled in it. But then I started writing reviews for Goodreads, and because I love books, I love Stephen King, read them all through high school, and started writing reviews for other books because I loved paranormal romance and just regular romance. And paranormal romance, if you don't know what it is, it's this stuff like Twilight, where there's romance with a little paranormal element in it.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be YA. That means a young adult. It doesn't have to be that. It could just be regular, 20, 30, 40-year-olds. So mine happened to be more in the 20s, but yeah.
And it's a huge category, isn't it?
It really is. And not quite as big as just contemporary romance, but I have to have that paranormal element. I have to do it, Paranormal Karen. I do.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you have it? Otherwise, it's just blah. I am so sick. I never liked romantic comedies, but they are just terrible.
Yeah. Every now and then you find one. We found a couple on, what was it? I think it was on Hulu that were really good. And I can't think of the names, but I'll text you and let you know. They were really good. And okay. But they were dark, of course. See, I like the dark stuff.
Yeah, we're all in the dark. You're on the right podcast. Because we all like. I always laugh. The only romantic movies I like are Ghost and What Dreams May Come, and in both of those, the men are dead. That's about. That's who I am. So you were right. Literally, that's really like wild that you were writing like encouragement from writing reviews. Like that was the best.
They were like, you need to be writing. Yeah. So I just, and I didn't know anything about really writing books. And I was actually really good friends with a very good writer. And I said, hey, I'd love to dabble in this. She goes, well, I'll help you write a book. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And she was like, yeah. Now she kicked my bottom when it came to, she was like, nope, that's terrible. Rewrite it. You have to have thick skin. So, and and this is back in like 2012. This is a long time ago. So, but we wrote 2 books together, and they're based out of New Orleans about 2 brothers that own a voodoo shop. And one book is about one brother and his romance. The other book is about the other brother and his romance. And then the next one is Atticus, and it's about a haunted house. And the next 3 are my Graveyard Watchman series about angels and demons. And then my last book is Apollo's Son, and it's about Apollo's actual son, Asclepius. He's a demigod, and it's in present day mythology. So I just kind of mix them all up, and I got great reviews. My last book was a bestseller on Amazon, so I'm really happy about it.
Oh, that's great. I do still find that funny. I have to say it would be very interesting to be like, I read your review of that alarm clock and I laughed and I cried and it all just came together. And now that's actually really cool. That's such a great sort of, shall I say, journey. That's wonderful. So you were doing the paranormal romance novels, and then you started a podcast. How did you just decide, or was it just the next evolution of writing to start a podcast?
Well, it's funny you ask. I've always listened to podcasts. I don't know if you ever remember Hay House Radio.
Oh yeah. Well, I kind of remember. I wasn't a member, but I know what it was. It was sort of one of the first. Wasn't quite a podcast, but it was like the first.
It was like an internet radio station, I think. So kind of like a podcast, but they had so many great guests, and I've been listening to podcast-ish things all this whole time. And I had several, and I submitted a little story to Hillbilly Horror Stories, which is another just ghost story podcast. Love all the stories. I'm a history buff, all the things. And they liked my story, and they had me on their show. And Jerry and Tracy Polly, they're the host of Hillbilly Horror Stories, and he was like, you need to start your own podcast. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm writing my own book. Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, come on my podcast. Come on my podcast one day a week and do Fear of the Week, and we'll talk about all these weird things. And I'm like, okay, so can I tell people that, how long they stay alive after their head gets cut off? And he's like, yeah, let's do that. And I said, how about, how many bugs you have on your face? But it's really good for you. You have a lot of bugs on your face right now. And then,
wow. I have a real quick question, though. That's the guillotine was actually supposedly the best form of death, wasn't it? Because your nervous system gets cut off, right?
Well, yeah, but you apparently, though, the brain will stay alive for another 30 seconds because there's still oxygen left in the brain for about another 30 seconds.
Well, that's why they said when they cut the heads off, it was painless because you don't feel the pain. But that's why everyone looked so stunned, because your head was rolling around, right?
Including the person whose head was rolling. They're like, wait a minute, what?
Right. You'd be dizzy. So you might have that look on your face.
Right.
But it's still supposed to be the most humane painless way to kill someone.
Yeah. The sword thing or the hatchet, that doesn't always work out. Yeah. No.
Yeah. You don't want to get halfway anything.
No. That happened to Mary Queen of Scots. They didn't quite go through, and so they had to do it several times before they got through her neck. Yeah. That wasn't fun.
Oh, I hope you're out of your body by then. I know, I know my friend Sonia says a lot of times the animals leave their body before.
I think a lot of people can leave. I think you have a choice. I think you can leave. I really do.
This was one of my favorite stories. I don't know where I heard it. I don't even know if it's true, but I choose to believe it's true because I like it. It was about a psychic who went to get on an elevator and then couldn't get on because she usually saw auras, and no one on the elevator had a aura. So she stepped off and was like, what happened? And then apparently the elevator dropped, the cable dropped, or there was a fire or something. So the people in the elevator were already dead.
Oh, are you kidding me?
No, I don't know if that's like what is it called? A urban legend or something.
Yeah.
But I like that story.
Yeah, I would prefer that over not having my body gone or my soul gone and then having to live through that. That would not be fun for me.
Right. I think I've met a lot of people who've already passed on also, just trying to date and have conversations with them. So I think it... That's what's happening. Oh, you have no aura. I see why this date isn't going well.
That makes perfect sense. But yeah, no. So and he said, you need to do your own podcast. I'm like, quit. No, I'm not doing it. I got to finish this book. And finally, after about 8 months, I said, okay. And he sent me this mic. And he goes, you really need to do it. And I'm like, well, okay, this is what I want to do it on. He goes, do it on what you love. And so I said, I want to do it and I named it because I want to know, because it's true. I want to know. I want to know what it's like to be a mortician, or have a near-death experience, or have a true crime event, or be a psychic and know, or be a tarot card reader. I already had you on my podcast and you were fantastic and everybody loved you.
Thank you.
Oh, they did. I have astrologers on. I have people but I go a whole different route. I love designing houses, or designing rooms and stuff with furniture. I've had 2 people that are interior designers on. I mean, it doesn't matter. If I want to talk to you, historians, I'll talk to you. So most of it is paranormal and true crime, but there are some, and you can pick and choose. I've got an ex guy that on my podcast who went to prison, and now he preps people for prison, so they know what to expect.
That has to be that's a fascinating topic right there.
Yeah, and he was fascinating. And then I met a mob boss who got out of it only 13 years ago, and I'm like, if you tell me this, do you have to kill me? I mean, what are we doing here?
Right.
And he's like, oh no, they all know I'm out. And it's okay, great. Well, I'm not going to tell too many things about myself, so go ahead and just talk about things,
Yeah, and I think so. I actually think you become less of a target the more that you say. Like I think I don't know. Like they're not gonna. It's pretty suspicious if you killed Joe Rogan, or you know what I mean. Like it's pretty. Right. Like, oh, he did a mob podcast and then they kill. Of course, it would make a great statement, but I think there'd be a lot more investigating, you could say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, but yeah, just you can cherry pick my episodes. There's just so much to choose from, and there's so many interesting people. I even interviewed a man on Munchausen by proxy, because I'm just very interested on why a mother would want attention on a child and go through all the things. It's that I think Netflix had a movie about that. The mother who just constantly took her baby or her child in for medical procedures, and she had all this documentation, and they had no reason to doubt her.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And it's just, and it goes on and on and on. And I'm just like, what? And,
Yeah. I think I know a guy that his mother did that, and he's so frail. It's very interesting. He's a very, very frail man now.
Yeah.
I mean, physically. Yeah.
Wow. Well, mentally, I'm sure too, because that's an indoctrination too. But no, it's just one of those things where I am so enamored and interested. I even interviewed a woman who talks about deaths of kings and queens, and she's in the UK, and she's got a book out now. And I'm like, well, what happened with, Mary Queen of Scots? Tell me about that, and King Henry VIII, and all the things. And I know a lot about those things too, but she told me more things about, how a body disintegrates and stuff.
Well, you know what? I want to go back to one thing, and maybe I can encapsulate this easy. The guy that was teaching you to get ready for prison. Because I find that interesting. I don't know why, but I always am like, okay, if I was in prison, I would do this, right? Like, I don't know, I haven't done anything. But then again, one of the things, something that I would like to, if I could ever make a film, if I had money to make a film, I would want to make a film on how people forgive. Because these people, I worked a little bit with the, I want to say the Justice League, but that's a Marvel movie. There was somebody we were doing shows for, and it was about getting people that actually were innocent out of jail, people that had been railroaded, and like 40 years later. And I remember talking to this guy, and I was like, how do you? And he's like, you just have to forget. And I was like, well, what? How do you do that? And he was like 50, and now he had a kid, and he was just working and just happy to be out, which I guess you'd just be happy. But I shouldn't say this out loud because I don't want the universe to do it, but I want to hear other people's story about how they forgive after terrible things like that. So the guy that got people ready for prison, was there one or two things that you were like, what? That are obviously not,
Well, and it was a federal prison, because he was one of those places where they would put up those quick little prescription shops, and they write all these prescription for people. For people, and it was literal doctors writing them, but it was still illegal. And he had really no idea. I mean, he knew it was shady, but he didn't know it was that bad.
Mhm.
And they did a raid, and he went to prison. He was sentenced to 13 years, and I think he only did 13 months.
Oh, thank God.
And but he learned, go into this program. Don't be a jerk. Don't, follow the cues and dot all your I's and all the things you need to do to get in good with everyone and have a good attitude. And he got out really quickly. But he didn't know all that. He just learned it along the way. And then he came out and he goes, because when he was convicted, he was scared to death.
Oh my God. And
yeah. Nobody could tell him what to do. He's like talking to the counselor and he's like, I can get you out of this. And then the counselor leaves and nobody tells him, this is what you do. Here's what you can expect. We're going to stay with you the whole way. You can talk to us. You can get counseling from us, even when you're inside prison. What are you doing? All the things. And I think it's a great program for people because, you're so scared and you don't know what you don't know.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So yeah. And he was amazing. He was really just very fascinating. And he's I think he's in the 60s as far as my episodes. I'd have to go look him up. But
okay. It's funny too, because one of the most terrifying and fantastic shows was Oz. And
oh yeah,
and Oz starts off with someone who he was a drunk driver, kills a girl, genuinely deserves to go to jail. But it's another one where they throw the book at him. And I feel like, they did that to Robert Downey Jr. His last stint in jail, the judge put him in. He got caught with drugs again. They put him in with murderers. Like how he made it out alive, I don't know. But I sometimes, you might be innocent. You might get that judge that decides you're the worst person in the world. It's just crazy and scary. I don't rule out anything. It's just so interesting. And, I interviewed another guy recently who, and you were talking about, you saw, I think you saw the video of the guy saying on TikTok.
On TikTok, he said, I watched my father murder his girlfriend and then I had to help dispose of the body. And then he took me down to his boat and beat me for 6 hours. And he was 17 or so. Yeah. And he goes, it's too hard to tell the story. I told Les, you can go to her podcast and listen. And his story, I cried. I mean, and I not like bawling, but I mean, it really moved me, the things he went through. And it's such a captivating episode in my mind, just because I want to help people. I want people to understand that everybody throws, washes things under the rug. Everybody sweeps things under the rug, and nobody really talks about certain things, whether it's parental abuse or, and I don't want to get too dark here.
But
any of those, and I don't want to get too dark here. It's just, so much is swept under the rug, and it's just, if somebody can talk about it and go, okay, yeah, I felt that way. Oh, you know what? I felt like that too. Oh, I wasn't the only one. And if nothing else, it'll get people going, okay. And I'm spreading awareness, hopefully, and helping people,
exactly
with compassion for another human being, if nothing else. We don't have a lot of that anymore.
And that is really interesting, because you and I had a talk prior to this, and we talked about a particular topic that I was like, you know what? It was very dark and awful, but it also, you're educating people, because I thought, what we were talking about, I thought, okay, there is this weird line, and this is, see, I could talk to you about anything. We're not even close to the topic yet. There is this weird line where, what do I do? Okay. Like if a neighbor's screaming, I will always call the cops. And I had a friend that was like, they're probably just having a fight or whatever. And it's like, how, you know what I mean? How much do you step in and how much do you not? Is always interesting. And the more you know about this, really could be something. I'll never forget. I had, well, anyways, let's do this. Let's come back, because also I want to talk a minute. I keep throwing curveballs at you. Before we get to cults, I want to talk a minute about true crime. So hang on, everybody. We'll be right back with Leslie Fear. Okay. Hey, everybody. I wanted to tell you about the $5 level I added to my Patreon. Starting in July, I'm going to be doing exclusive Paranormal Karen content there. It's going to be 1 to 2 episodes a month. It'll be a little different than here. Most of the episodes will be me talking about what I'm looking into or what I'm investigating or what is fascinating to me. I'm also going to be doing a series called What's Going On in Utica. When I moved here, I had no idea what a paranormal hotspot this was. People started telling me about the hauntings in their homes, and I was shocked. I have never heard stories like this, and I've been doing this about 30 years. Historically, this area is fascinating, with everything from the Underground Railroad to horrible Civil War battles to even the mob moving in at one point. And I'm also going to be covering a lot of true crime out here. I have never done that, but the stories out here, the unsolved murders, are so crazy. This place makes Los Angeles look like a kid's playground. So go to Patreon.com/Rontowski and you can sign up for the $5 Paranormal Karen level, or you can sign up for some extra tarot stuff while you're there. All right, back to the show. Now, it is a joke in comedy clubs, but it's true. Women watch a lot of true crime in Dateline. And
yeah, we do.
I don't, but I understand sometimes overcoming fear is by arming yourself with knowledge. I mean, do you think that's what's going on, or do you think, because I think women are indoctrinated with a ton of fear coming into life?
Oh, no, I absolutely do. And, it just depends on where you are. Honestly, in the United States, you can be in the South and be indoctrinated in a whole different way than you can in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, it just depends on where you are. And unfortunately, I think it happens more often than I'd like to admit. Any of these true crime events, where, and specifically, whether it's, like we said, sex trafficking, or if it's, murder, parental abuse, all the things, the best thing to do is, if you know something, say something. And that's my best advice for anyone, because I'd rather be wrong than never say anything and somebody was
dead.
Hurt.
Yeah.
Is dead. Yeah. So, and I've got a bunch of true crime on my podcast as well. So if you like that kind of thing, go for it, because and I can get pretty dark. It can get kind of dark, and it's never anything where, I try to keep it as light as I can as far as how we're talking and those kinds of things. But I do go there, and I do ask those questions that everybody wants to know, because here's the deal. I want to know. And I will ask. So,
is there a one particular true crime story that sticks out in your head where it just kept twisting and twisting and twisting?
That the sex trafficked one, yes.
Oh yeah. There was one. This is really interesting. There was a movie that I saw that was called The Imposter, and there's about 5 movies named of this, and it was about. It was a true crime. And it was about a kid that went missing, and somebody else comes forward and is this that kid? And it was beyond mind-blowing. Somebody might find it. It was a little bit long, but it was really quite fascinating, of this person coming in and just impersonating and just going with the flow. And and who knew, and why didn't they know? But I'll never forget that, because that was really just one of the oddest stories I've ever heard. And okay, so women love the true crime, and now let's get to cults. So you actually have a connection to, and you knew someone that got caught in a cult. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate, everybody's heard of that. It was a cult that was formed in 1974 by Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite. And they were known as T and Doe, which is, okay.
Sounds like a rap
what I
group.
think? Well, you know what it is? I do know this little tidbit. Bonnie Nettles' favorite musical or favorite show or film was The Sound of Music.
Oh.
T and Doe. There's where you get the T and Doe.
Which is interesting that, first of all, the leader, have there been any female cult leaders? I don't think so, right?
I
don't think we're that respected yet that we can't round up a bunch of people and
right,
and then brainwash them. But we'll work on it. We'll
work on it. Well, you know what? It's funny. Bonnie pretty much started Heaven's Gate, and Marshall Applewhite just kind of went along with her.
And it's also interesting that Sound of Music, something so innocent and like Yeah, so they start a church. Do you know how this? Well, tell us who you know that was in it.
Well, what happened was, and like I said, I was really young. I was probably seven or eight when all in 1974. So, I was a little kid wondering how the light went off in the fridge. I don't, whatever,
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Other
I wasn't
things.
worried about,
Cults. Yeah.
exactly. So, but backing up, Heaven's Gate was, of course, founded by Applewhite and Nettles. Well, my grandmother, my mother's mother, her name was Lorraine. She was one of the first members with them. And she got her daughter, Sharon, my mother's sister, and my mother's half sister, Judy, involved in the cult.
How old were they about that time?
Oh my gosh, they were probably in their mid to later 20s.
Okay, so they weren't that young. Okay.
Yeah, they may have been a little bit older. I say that, and I'd have to look up notes because like I said, my family members, we were not all very close. Like my mom was pillar to post child. Lorraine dropped her off with her sister Sharon at her sister's house for years and would just show up out of the blue again and come get them. It was just the weirdest thing.
So she wasn't all put together to begin with.
Oh, no. And she was very eccentric. I mean, and I didn't even know Lorraine very well. She would just show up. And I was like, I don't even know you. And you're here at my graduation, or I don't even know you. And you're here at my first child's, gathering where we're all coming together at the house to check out the kid. It was just weird.
And obviously there's some mental issue there. Were you, when you, and this is not about the cult thing, but obviously if she just shows up to that stuff, it's very uncomfortable, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Well, you don't even know them. And she shows up and she's actually got a personality and she's pretty funny. So you kind of want to like her. And at the time, when she showed up at the time when I had my son in 97, the cult had just committed suicide, like literally months before.
So she didn't go to San Diego with them? No.
Okay. No. Well, she got out. She pretty much, she got out, I think, because she was getting too old and she decided to go ahead and leave. And, and Sharon and my mom's sister, Sharon, and Sharon stayed in for a little while, but then she left. But Judy stayed in. Judy is my mom's half sister because Lorraine married another man and had Judy.
Okay.
So, and I didn't know. I barely knew Sharon, so I certainly didn't know Judy.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I knew of her and I'd met her a couple of times. So like I said, I just didn't know these people very well. So it really didn't affect me. But when all this happened and they committed suicide, and I will back up and tell you more about the other things, but when they committed suicide, it was just like, my mother was like, okay, well, you can't talk about this. People Magazine, don't talk to them. They're coming to me. And I'm like, okay, well, Mom, I don't even know enough to be dangerous. I don't even know anything about this, But as time went on, I learned and I was like, holy crap, what the heck is going on with my family members?
Wow. Okay. So your mom absolutely knew a lot.
Oh, my mother knew everything. And like I said, the thing is, she just didn't talk about it. So why would I know any more than that? And so when it all came down, she finally said, Lorraine, my mom, got into this and she got Sharon into it. She got Judy into it. And then she left and Sharon left after that. And then Judy stayed in it. Now, Judy left my cousin, who was Cindy, and I interviewed her, and it's now up on my podcast. If anybody's interested, it's Heaven's Gate episode. I don't know her very well, as you probably can gather, since I didn't know anybody else very well.
Sure.
But my mom and Cindy really formed a bond after her mother committed suicide. Cindy and my mom kind of got closer, and stories started to be told and timelines started to kind of add up. And I was like, oh, that's when that was. Oh, it's kind of that kind of thing. That's literally how the podcast went, because we're like blind leading the blind. I'm like, wait a minute. Judy came back. What happened then? All the things. So, and I know I sound like I'm just a crazy person talking about this.
No, this is quite actually quite in line. And also when So Judy's the one that stayed, right?
Judy's the one that stayed and left Cindy and her brother. And Cindy was only 8 and her brother was 6 when she left. And Judy, by the time she actually stayed with the group, I think she was closer to 30 by then.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
So Cindy was never a part of the group, or Cindy was there as a kid and got out?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
no, Cindy was never a part of the group. Cindy was really young,
Okay.
and I was like, well, didn't your dad know? And nobody knew, but the neighbor knew.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
How did the neighbor
Yeah,
know?
I guess Judy just confided in her. I don't, and I do know that Cindy said her dad was a very difficult person to live with, and that may have been the first inkling of Judy going, you know what, I don't love this life I'm leading right now, and something's got to be better than this. Now, how you can leave your children, I don't understand that. I'm a mom. It'd be like you leaving Courage. How could you leave Courage?
Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing. There's just no way you could do that. But I say that, and I don't know what I don't know about her life. I don't know her mental status and all that, and I don't know her very well. But I do know Cindy was just devastated, and her brother was too. Her brother committed suicide years later because he just couldn't cope with all of this. And it affects the family so much more than people realize. Honestly, more than you can even imagine. And it affected me, and I barely knew them.
Right.
So,
it's not like somebody that just goes, I'm moving across country and I'll see you whenever. It's
no, you cannot have contact with your family. You cannot write letters. You're going to cut your hair. You're going to give us all your money. You're going to work like a horse at this house. You're going to do all these things, and you can keep a journal, and it's going to be a boring life, but you won't have any more responsibilities other than just doing what we want you to do and leading a pure life and no sex. And the men eventually Applewhite decided to go ahead and have the men get castrated. It was just the most bizarre thing.
Wow.
Yet he was a homosexual, and he
was in the closet, couldn't admit it.
And he was in the closet, and he pushed all that on his members. He couldn't have it. He couldn't enjoy it. He felt bad. The son of a Presbyterian minister, who, of course, tried not to be gay. And, the man can be gay. That's just the way life is.
Yeah, thank God we're a little bit past that. I always think we're a little bit past that. But then again, I don't, I'm a city girl, and in the city, no one seems to care. I don't know I hope no one cares anyway. Yeah. I really do.
Well, right. And, Marshall Applewhite was born in 1931. So, back in the 50s, in 60s, that wasn't cool. And they did everything they could, especially being, from a religious family, they did everything they could to keep him from being gay, I'm sure. And that was the start of his undoing, his mental undoing. I have to believe that.
I had an uncle who was really obviously gay and only around men all the time. And even to the end, he felt like he couldn't say it to his family, but it was almost kind of, he was so smart, and he wanted to work for the FBI, and he couldn't get in. And we all think, he said it was because our great grandfather was from Germany or something, too connected to Germany because of the Nazis and stuff, even though we weren't Nazis. But we always felt bad because we thought it was because he was gay. They weren't going to let him in.
Well, and back then, I don't know what the rules were, but, it was just it was so much worse back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's becoming a Handmaid's Tale again in this society, but I won't go there.
We don't know what's coming. And that is actually a really interesting thing about the waves of society, how we get to one place and then we wave back to another. That's just mankind. But so
it is. Yeah.
Now, did Judy get to tell her family that she was never coming back?
No, and that was the thing when I was talking to Cindy and interviewing her, because she didn't talk to the press. She never did. And she ended up just coming on my podcast. And like I said, we have talked many times on the phone, and I think I've met her one time in person, but we're not sure. That's how sketchy in my mind everything is, because it's just been so long.
Right.
And she's only 2 years younger than me, so we're about the same age. And, so when I was talking to her, I was just like, okay, so no one knew. Only the neighbor knew. Your dad didn't even know. And did she say goodbye? And she goes, no. And she goes, and I always wondered, how can you not say goodbye to your kids?
Yeah.
How can you just leave this weird religion, who's, committed suicide in Rancho Santa Fe? I guess that's where it was in San Diego. That's where it was when the house was. But the entire time you can't talk to her. They forbade everything. You can't, no letters are sent. They want all your money, and that's it. It's like she never existed. And then all of a sudden, when Nettles died of cancer in like 1985, that's when the group that's when their views like ascended, well, that's basically when Applewhite decided to make up other rules for the group. And
so when the woman that was the organizer left, then he decided we're doing this.
Yeah.
And
Nettles died of cancer, and so when she was gone, now Applewhite, and she was the ringleader. Applewhite had nothing to do but make it up as he went.
Interesting.
So he did let them come home for a little while. He let everyone come home. So Judy came home and saw her, and she goes, and I lived with my mom for like 5 years. And I'm like, what?
Oh, goes, and hold that thought for 1 second. I want to jump back one thing. How did the neighbor know, or did the neighbor eventually tell Cindy what happened, or how did the neighbor come into this? The neighbor's listening to this going, this is a cult. This is bad. Like, how did the neighbor get that? Do we know?
She never, I think she asked. I don't think she ever got a straight answer from the neighbor. The neighbor was, her parents' age, and, she was a kid when it all happened. So she didn't get that chance as an adult to really talk to her like you would think anyone else did. And as a kid, when you're 8 and you're not asking those questions.
Right. Is my mom in a cult? So, yeah. We hope you're not asking those questions. Okay. So she goes away. And this is very interesting because so basically you're saying they got to go home for like 5 years and then they all got called back.
They all got called back. Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and it was weird because, I guess Cindy said, my dad just loved my mom so much that, he let her come back to the house, and they were just went back to normal like everything else. Everything was fine. But he knew she had been indoctrinated. He knew she was not the same person. And so he said, listen, I can't do this. So she left, and then she went to Texas and married some cowboy. I mean, it was just the most bizarre thing. I mean,
it had to be culture shock, like to live like that and then be back in the regular world. Did anybody know if she knew she was going to be called back, or did she really think she was home for good? Or it sounds like she was in such a fog or in such a brainwash.
Well, yeah. Well, I know that Applewhite got in some trouble, and he was in jail for a little while, and then he came up with that with a new kind of thing that the body, because before, the body never dies, right? Well, now all of a sudden the body's the container or the vehicle. And now we need to have next level bodies, and that means we have to die to get our next level bodies.
Huh.
So, yeah. And because she wasn't doing well in society, because she'd been there long enough to really kind of screw her head up, she wasn't doing well. So she went back to the group.
And that's probably why, okay, that's so interesting. You know what? Let's take a break right here, and then I have a question. We'll get back to this. All right, folks, we'll be right back.
Hey, everyone. This is Lindsay Pandia, and I'm a recovering psychologist. I have over 20 years of experience in the mental health field, but I realize there's so many limitations. I know there are quicker ways to unlock someone's healing potential and traumas, so I stepped away from being a psychologist and took the scary leap to follow my heart and provide spiritual healing full-time. I believe I have a unique perspective that can help you also step into your full potential. I provide one-on-one healing for trauma through shamanic practices, inner child work, shadow work, and so much more. My Inner Child Workshop begins May 4th at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and May 11th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And all of the sessions will be recorded, so if you need to jump in after the workshop begins, just message me. I'd be happy to share them with you. You can learn more about what I offer and connect with me on my website at intuitivepsych.com. That's intuitivepsych.com. Join me and let's go play with your inner child and see how we can transform your traumas into treasures.
Okay, so it's very interesting because I also kind of feel like comics are supposed to be the anarchists. We're the ones. So I think it would be very hard to brainwash a comic, but I don't know. Maybe I just have a huge ego. But how? Because I know I've seen even Hare Krishnas, which I don't even know. Like I have seen people that had that fog. It really is a fog that are not. They're not in the same reality as us. And I'm imagining that's what she was like. She was kind of in that fog. How do they brainwash? You were saying they make sure no contact with the family at all, which, by the way, is one of the I can't remember the term of this, but that's sort of, there's a kamikaze love thing that goes on. And it's usually a narcissist, and they will grab a partner and they will tell that partner they're in love with them. They knew they were the one, and they will pull them away from their friends and their family. It's almost like a little bit of a brainwashing technique.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's the one thing you were saying. They cut off from anybody that's going to talk sense into them. And what else do they do?
Well, I mean, it's what you were talking about is more of a narcissistic kind of thing, where a guy is just, or a woman, whoever it is, or whatever the situation is, someone is in control of someone else, regardless. And the love bombing and the gifts and the trust you get, and then you take it away, and then you get it back, and then you take it away. And that kind of happened here too, but not in the same way. It's just, they based it on getting to the next level with God or whatever. I'm sure it was God in their minds, because it was considered a church, but it was just so bizarre, because when you're talking about someone who has been so probably punished because of his own sexuality for so long, they start losing a little bit of their own self. And then when they lose themselves, because think about it, he was already a very damaged person when Nettles came into the picture. Bonnie Nettles came in. She manipulated him. Then all of a sudden, he's on top of the world. Oh my goodness, somebody likes me. I'm accepted now. Look at me, right? Okay, there you go. There's that indoctrination. There's that grooming. Now I'm good now. And now, okay, she's made me feel like I am on top of the world. Unfortunately, she dies, or maybe fortunately, that sounds terrible, but okay, whatever. So she passes away. So in 1985, she passes away. Well, all of a sudden, it challenged the group's views. Oh, what are we doing? What? Wait a minute. Okay, so, and then he kind of loses it a little bit, gets caught doing some things he shouldn't be doing, stealing cars, writing bad checks, goes to jail, right?
Right.
And
which is also a weird, segue. I'm just going to steal cars. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, I think he actually stole like a rental car. I think it was like that. It may not have been more than one. It may have just been one. But, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's what we understand. But, sometimes you don't see that on the information. Sometimes it say that. So that's just what I know. And then, but the thing is that derailed him. And so when he got derailed, he made it so much worse, because I don't think Bonnie would have liked some of the things he decided later on, because I don't think she was about killing themselves. I know that. She wasn't about the next level bodies upon death. She wasn't about that, as far as I can tell.
Was she his wife? Sort of?
No.
Okay.
They were not, obviously were not attracted to each other, but they were, confidants or whatever. But it's just he just pretty much lost his mind. But when you are indoctrinated by someone who was literally not sane, there's no telling what kind of mental, attribute that's going to give you. What kind of effect is that going to have on you? You're already a little unstable because you've been living with probably a not very nice husband. Okay. He was not very nice. He's very verbally abusive. That's what I know. Okay.
Right.
That's all I know. And so you're doing anything. And back then, in the 60s and 70s, everybody was trying to find their way. It was all about, spirituality, and there's got to be more, and, the hippie world and all that.
And that is one of those things that makes me nervous, because I know I have a bunch of friends that are always like, let's go buy land and grow our own food and this and that. And I'm always like, I think so. Right. And I mean, I don't have any friends that want to start a cult, but I think whenever people are grouping, it gets hard.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I think it was like, hey, listen, this is kind of a new little religious movement, and we're just going to do this, and let's all meet at the college.
Yeah.
And let's be free, and let's all talk. We don't have to be specific, Presbyterians like my dad was. It made me feel bad about being homosexual. Let's do this. And then it just morphed into that, whatever it became. And then, but they were all very interested in UFOs. They were all very interested in this new agey ufology and all of that stuff. And that contributed to all of this.
And that's interesting now, because that's back. It's almost like we are in a wave where we might need to be careful for cults. And I'm not kidding.
Well, no, I mean, you always, be careful of anything, and it's not because, well, the thing is, and I do think there's a level of instability with anyone who comes into a place where you would actually leave your children or leave your family and take and rename yourself. Let go of your identity. Let go of any human ties, because they made it to where they didn't even really want to be human anymore. They acted like their bodies were just containers.
Wow.
It was just crazy.
Yeah, I would love to know the state of mind right before, because there has to be a place where you accept before the manipulation, and probably a place really deep inside where you want to be manipulated. I'll never forget on that 70s show, one of the most brilliant episodes was where the guy starts going out with the bossy girl, and his ex-girlfriend goes, "Why?" And he goes, "I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to make a choice." And that's a lot of people. That's men and women. That
when things are taken care of. No, you're right, Karen. That's a good point.
Yeah.
When things are taken care of you, and there are people that just can't handle the stress. And I understand that. Life is hard and life is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And and a lot of people are just so tired. And I do understand that. I get it, especially right in this particular day and age.
Yeah.
So I get it, but I do know that when they all decided that, the next level bodies upon death was the way to go, it's like they did it in groups, like 9 would die or 3 would die, and they would put the blankets. My thought would be like, okay, first of all, these people are dead. I'm putting something over them. See, I would think humanity would come through and go, what the hell are we doing?
Well, you would think, but also, what's interesting about that is, when you say life is hard, and I literally think the hardest part of life is the red tape. Like my move here was hard enough, but trying to switch health insurance companies, I would have gladly had a roll of quarters and been in Heaven's Gate just to get out. Trying to change health insurance. But you know what? There's also, and I think this is what happens. Like if I do something and I know I'm totally wrong, but I switch the story and I tell you and I go, and then I told her off because she was out of line when it's actually me. And then you go, well, that story makes sense, Karen. Of course you should have told her off. And then it sort of snowballs. Like, what if somebody's like, I don't think that's right. And then 3 other people go, I don't know. They look pretty peaceful. And then that person goes, I never forget when I did one of those in Hollywood. You could get paid to do surveys. They'd have you watch a show and then you'd review it. And one of the shows they had us watch was Bill Maher's show. And this is when it first came out. I thought it was great. And then one woman in the group goes, I don't really like his hair. And I was like, what? And then another woman in the group goes, yeah, I think something was wrong with his hair. And I'm watching 4 women talk about his hair. And then finally I step up and I go, first of all, the show was funny. It was informative. And then all 4 of them switched. She's right. Wow. It was, I would watch this show. I thought,
see how easy that is.
And how easy. Exactly. And I think that's what happened. Like they see the dead bodies and one of them goes, that's not right. And 4 of them go, oh, no, that's exactly right. And then, oh, okay. So no humanity steps through.
The next thing you know, you're transforming yourselves into immortal extraterrestrial beings by rejecting their human nature. And then, all of a sudden you ascend to heaven and you're referred to as next level or the evolutionary level above human.
Right. It's hard, but you got to get there. Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, what are you talking about? And, but when I was interviewing Cindy, my cousin, because honestly, we talked about Heaven's Gate, but I actually just wanted to know how it affected her.
Right.
And I said, and I said, Cindy, one thing before we started recording, and she doesn't have any children. And I asked her, I said, you never had any kids, and that's fine. I just said, I'm just curious, some people just don't want kids. That's fine.
Right.
And she goes, Leslie, the reason I didn't have any kids. And she goes, I needed to take care of that little girl inside me.
I agree.
Because she goes, and she said, also, I didn't want to be a mother that left her child. I didn't want to be that kind of mommy. And I was like, oh. Hit me in the gut.
Yes. And, that's even, I have to say, I helicoptered over Courage, who had a lot of ailments. He went on, 18 years, but I
He was your child.
He was my child. And
Yes.
and that is a certain level of stress when you perhaps haven't been parented correctly yourself, that you can go the opposite, not neglectful, but like, oh my God, I hope everything's going to be okay. And
You're right. And in her mind,
so
she stopped that cycle, you know, in her mind, she stopped that horrible cycle because, and I'm going to be honest, and my mom is now past 5 years ago, and I know she's okay talking about this. I just know she is. I can kind of communicate with her. That's another story. I don't know. I'm not psychic or medium, but I just know
I believe you. I believe in everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just said, is it okay to talk about this? Because I was just like so nervous. And she said, it's your story. Absolutely. This happened to you, not specifically, but it did affect you, all the things.
Yeah.
And I was just like, my mom was sometimes absent too, not like Judy did and not like Sharon, her sister, did with her kids, because Sharon left her kids, but she didn't leave them for good. She came back. But Judy, to me, it was worse that she came back and even left again. I mean,
yeah.
So, and then there's Cindy left again, and Cindy was just mentally a mess. Then she got very religious. Then she got really the other way. It was just a mess for her. But now she lives in California. I don't know if you knew that. And she is a massage therapist, and she's also a Reiki master, and she's amazing. And she's an amazing human. And all of it is because she overcame this. And I'm a big believer in reincarnation, and I'm a big believer in karma and things that we have to work out in our lives. And I do think we pick our parents, and I do think we pick our lives. And for some reason, she needed to get over this, and this is something she chose. And I don't get me wrong, that's simplifying it to a big point. And I've had some very but I do believe we pick our lives, because listen, she's getting her PhD for God. Let me tell you right now.
Yes. So. Well, you know what else? Our poor mothers, and their mothers. My grandmother was in Germany. She married a man, I think 30 or 40 years older than her, because she didn't want to have kids. And then she had 8. Or, even our mothers, it wasn't even until, I think it was after the 50s, where they did away with the law where a man could just have his wife sent away to an insane asylum without any questions.
Oh, yeah.
So they
happens all the time.
Yeah, them not being perfect mothers, God, they had 2 choices. Are you going to be a wife or a teacher? And there's nothing in between. And if you're not going to get married, it's just society is just all. I don't know any. I know one person I think had a good life, and I don't like her.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
no. But it's just, but we ended the conversation with just, hey, listen, I thank you for coming on. And she was like, you know what? It healed me to just talk about. She's never talked about it ever like this. And she goes, the fact that we because we were able to piece some things together. And I was like, oh, well, that's when it was. Okay, well, this is when I met her. Oh, okay. Oh, she went to Texas. Oh, all the things, right? So you're piecing it all together. So that part helped us. But just the fact that she just got to talk about it. We were forbidden to talk about that. Well, I think she just forbade herself to talk about it.
Yeah.
But to get it out. And she didn't, hey, her dad and her brother, before he killed himself, they did an HBO special and was on an HBO special, but she said, I don't want anything to do with it. So the fact that she came on my podcast made me feel very, yes, she's my cousin, but listen, she really, we talked a long time before I could get her to come on and talk about it.
Well, that's like, I have a friend who's in show business who wouldn't say she was psychic. And she was like, oh, they're going to judge me and I'll get cast and things. And I feel lucky to be so free of that, because your cousin, that has a little freak factor to it. My mother was killed in Heaven Gate. That has a little, she doesn't want to be a freak. She just wants to be a person.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. And she said that. She goes, listen, how do you tell somebody you're going to marry your husband or whoever you're dating, hey, listen, you may want to sit down.
Yeah.
I mean, because she still gets approached. She still gets approached here and there, and, she won't talk to them. So, yeah, but it is a little bit of a woo-woo freak thing. And, I'm so far removed from it. Therefore, I think it helped her just to talk about it, because I wasn't going to we did get a little emotional, because I love her now, and I've gotten really a lot closer to her now. She sent me the best vodka, by the way. It's fantastic. So
Well, there you go. That's now she's my friend too.
Yeah.
It's funny because there are certain folks, I'm taping this right after 4 readings. So if I'm moving a little bit slow, this is what it is, because I had a thought in my head. It is a hard thing of what people are going to judge you for. And that could also sort of overshadow everything.
No, it really, well, it's just like, well, he thought he would be judged for being homosexual. So he did everything he could not to be and formed a cult. And now 39 people are dead because of it.
It's amazing how much we love shame in this country.
Wow. That's profound. No, it is. And instead of, but back then, that's all that was shown to us by the people above us, by the people that were supposed to protect us.
Yeah. So many of my readings, I see, we're so afraid to change, and we're so afraid to say, that's not right, and we need to do it more. But also in this cancel culture, you could say something's not right. Next thing you know, Twitter's attacking. It's we're in such a strange time. But I always think, and this is, again, I have to watch my words, but there's a couple of things in life that I am curious about, but not. Like, it's like, how that when the Beatles came on, girls screamed, or like when Justin Bieber comes out and they faint. Like, I would love to meet that guy that when he walked in the room, I faint. Like that. Like, what is that? Like, I know it's probably bad, but I'm like, what is that? And I feel a little bit like that about, you're going to brainwash me, really? Like,
exactly. Yeah. And, a lot of it's just, the energy in the room, and they're so excited, and, you want to scoreboard someone else who's also so excited. So let me faint and just get everybody else's attention. It's all ego driven. And unfortunately it's just.
And I know both of those things are there somewhere there inside of me, maybe not in this life. I'm too old, but I remember once a long time ago, I had a friend who was very into the paranormal, very into the witchy stuff. And he said, I want you to meet my group. And I went and met the group, and it was beyond weird. And they made me put on a robe and all this other stuff. And it was like one of these where I actually talked to my demonologist about this a little while later. And he was like, okay, let's do a little cutting ceremony. But the whole time I was like, how do I get out of here? How do I get out of here without causing a stir? I didn't know them. I didn't know what they might do. But also, other people may have been scared and gone along and then came back again because they were scared. They came to their house or came back again. And because I'm always like, I don't know. I always think I'm much bigger and scarier than I am. But
people are just, some people are just that polite culture of, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, and I've been there once, I'll go again.
Yeah.
And then they go again, and then they're like, well, okay, this isn't so bad. And then all of a sudden they're in Heaven's Gate, and 25 years later it's a mass suicide. It really can happen without. I don't even think people knew what was going on because it was such a gradual thing for them.
Right.
And it's just, and it's just one of those things. And it's one of those people. It's one of those things when people are in prison for so long, they don't want to leave.
Right. It's because it's afraid of change. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't know anything else. These people didn't know anything else. They've been there so long.
Yeah.
So, and you gotta feel bad for them too, because these people were just lost souls to me. I mean, if you're doing that kind of thing and committing suicide, my goodness, there's 2 that didn't actually commit suicide, but 39 did. So yeah.
Yeah, I bet there's a place where the brain chemistry takes over and you don't have a choice.
I think so too. And I think once you're in, and once you say you're in, you're too far gone. And then, you got to step up to the plate. And unfortunately, that's what happened with these people. And with my dear aunt. And like I said, I didn't know her very well. She came and saw me sing. I used to sing all over Dallas, Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. And she came to see me sing one set. And I'd never met her. My mom just walks in with this really cute little girl. I say girl, this woman. She looks so young to me. She's just a tiny thing. And she had cute little bob, blonde hair, style, and she's just very sweet and kind and loving. And I never would have known she'd been in a cult and was out for that was the time she came out, and for 5 years, and that's when I met her.
That is even when and I don't even know if this is a cult, but and I don't even see them anymore. Remember the Hare Krishnas?
Yes.
They really did look like they were at peace. If any of my listeners want to come on and you've been in a cult or something, I would please email me, because I think that, even like I said, I'm always against the crowd. So no matter what it is, I am always kind of on the other lane. But I can see there was a moment I remember looking at the Hare Krishnas, and they genuinely looked peaceful, and they genuinely looked like that was okay. Like, I almost in the beginning thought they were monks, that, but it's, and I always say, like, I agree, me and Ryan Singer are always saying, I'm capable of anything. So my cult might be right down the street, but I don't know. Comedy's my cult, or paranormal.
That's right.
But
I always think of the movie Airplane when I think of Hare Krishnas, at the airport.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I think we're all capable of anything. That's probably why you and I are so curious about everything, because we know that nothing is unbelievable, really.
No, it's true. And, the fact that somebody in my family, this happened to them, and yes, I am pretty loosely related to them, but it's still my DNA. And you're thinking, oh my, that's why Cindy didn't have children. She goes, I didn't want to be the mom that left her kids.
Right. So she already didn't see a way out. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
So, but to me, think about it. She didn't even have a choice in her mind, because she didn't, and she needed to heal that little girl. So, and that's fine. That's how it worked out for her. And she's very happy, loves her life. She's doing fantastic. And I'm so happy. She's such a wonderful person.
Yeah. And I, that's true. I love my life, and people, I just was at my friend's house in Nashville, and I was just talking to her daughter all day, and she's like, I didn't know you were that good with kids, because I'm not really a kid person, but they're good. But there is a fear, like when I got Courage, he was going with me everywhere, period. It was like, I don't know what's going to happen if I leave him home alone. So I also can understand that is sometimes the other reason not to have children.
Yeah. And, she just decided that was it. But you know what? And it totally worked out for her, because, like I said, she's married to a great guy. Yeah. And I can't say enough happy things for her. She's just so happy. Yeah. And I'm thrilled for her.
I feel that way about my life. I really, even if I had to move to Utica, New York, and I didn't want to, everything's good. Everything's way better. I just have to end on this last thing. I just thought it was so funny when this happened. And it's really not funny, but I remember Lewis Black saying, and they all died with a roll of quarters, because apparently there's a casino on the other side.
There probably was. I don't even know if there was. There probably was.
Leslie, you were so great. Tell my friends where to find your podcast, and I have your link tree in the bio. Just give them a quick podcast everywhere, because I want to know, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, podcast Because I Want to Know. It's on Apple and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And all of my books are on Amazon. And like Karen said, she has the link tree in her notes.
Yay! All right. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you to Mike at Uno Rising Media. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Paranormal Karen.